Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another one of our weekly Bofuri discussion videos. And today we are here to talk all about episode 4, but before we get into things proper, I do want to give a big thank you to those of you who shared last week's video over on Twitter. At Bubbalubber, at Osiris99, at Matthew3645, at Janame, and at Clear Chicken. Thank you all so much for sharing last week's video over on Twitter, and if you too would like to have your name shouted out in next week's Bofuri video, then be sure to share this video around on the internet, and then tag me at JoJo Talks Too Much over on Twitter, and I will be sure to shout your name out in next week's video. Okay, so when it comes to this week's episode of Bofuri, there is really only two things to talk about, although one of them takes up a majority of the episode and ends up being the coolest damn thing ever. But the two things being the scavenger hunt and the devs, the dev team. I'm gonna go ahead and start with the devs since I have a little bit less to say about them specifically. The dev team is sort of shown in this week's episode. It's a little bit weird. They show up maybe a little bit past the midpoint. In fact, I'd say maybe like towards like the end of the 2/3 into the episode, the end of that, like just before the last third. They show up and they're basically observing the scavenger hunt, and they're watching it like in space on this big like screen that they're kind of like orbiting around, and they're in these adorable little avatars that sort of remind me of the game's mascot character, like that dragon looking dude, but they look more like I don't even know. I guess they're sort of just monster looking things. I guess they kind of, I'm not looking at a picture of them and I'm trying to go off memory. I think they look like bunny things. I'm not super sure. But I knew that they were cute because I wrote down, oh my god, it's adorable. And then ... are these the devs? And yes, I'm pretty sure they're the devs because they are observing what is happening during the episode and they're watching the big fight in the second half. And they're sort of observing it going like, how did somebody take down the big ice bird that we put into this game? Like, who invented this game, to quote El Dorado again? And it's this moment where they're like, oh my god, please don't tell me that's Maple. And then they look at who the players are around the corpse of their boss, and they're like, ah, damn it, it's Maple. Isn't that boss supposed to be unbeatable, like essentially unbeatable? And so, of course, Maple and Sally are the ones to beat it. And it did make me laugh to see the devs like get all upset because they're not the biggest fans of Maple as it turns out. Apparently they don't have the highest opinion of Maple, even though she's basically just playing the game that they made. But according to them, Maple means work because Maple has a tendency to break their damn game. And when a game breaks, what do the devs do? They got to go back in and fix it and patch it up. And so the devs, when they see Maple doing stuff, it's why they had to they put in the last patch notes, or they made the last patch and listed in the notes like that certain builds got nerfed, and really it was just Maple got nerfed. And now Maple, in fairness, like the ability she gets here doesn't seem that OP, where it's like she's able to withstand, she's able to take a hit at if she has 10% of her HP left. If she's blocking an ally, she's able to sort of tank that hit and survive at 1 HP. That's not that broken. Like, we've seen games where that's like a thing. And to me, I was like, that's not that OP. It's just that it kind of saved them in the end. And so, yeah, when they were like, oh, we gotta patch it again, I'm like, not really. Like, it's just that Maple and Sally are really good. Like, you don't necessarily, I mean, you could patch it, but like this time I don't really think they need to do much work. But it's just funny to see them freak out anytime Maple does anything. They're like, damn it, why? I hope we actually continue to see them. I don't overuse them, of course. You don't want to overuse your comedic element because then it stops being funny. But I did think that the devs were a nice touch to the episode. Just seeing them sort of freak out over Maple was really, really cute. And again, the fact that they're also cute little avatars it just adds to the cute, funny nature of that scene. Again, maybe just every couple episodes, check in with the devs. Like at the end of like big boss encounters or big PvP matches, cut to the devs being like, oh my god! It'd be cute and fun, but just don't overdo it. But yeah, I liked that. But moving on, we gotta talk about the scavenger hunt itself, which was genuinely a lot of fun. The first thing that the pair really do is essentially throw down with this big clown monster, And this is where we see Maple being really clever with the skills that she's been given, that being the whole cover move. The way she uses cover move is that since her mobility is so low, and during a fight, it's not exactly like Sally can just pick up Maple and carry her on her back, although thinking of that is kind of funny, just like if Maple held the shield over top, like in front of Sally, and Sally just charged forward, that'd be kind of fun. They're definitely going to do that. Now that I say that out loud, that's going to happen at some boss. Like, there's a boss is going to fire a big beam at them one day, and Sally's just going to pick up Maple, and they're just going to carry Maple in front. But yeah, they don't obviously have the ability to do that when the boss is more like of an acrobatic type of boss. So Sally basically is dancing around this thing, and as Sally's trying to dodge this big clown thing's attacks, Maple is being clever and using cover move, which basically allows her to teleport in front of her ally and sort of tank a hit. And even if she doesn't have to like tank the hit, she could just teleport near them to cover them. So she's actually not only using it for combat, but also using it for mobility, which I really like. Sally does say at some point, like, only you would think of that. And no, most people would think of that. Like, if I were a shielder, that would be my first thought. Is like, oh, well, I could use this to kind of catch up to friends of mine if I'm lagging behind. So I do think that the show gives Maple like too much credit. Like it does seem like other players would have thought of certain elements that Maple has added to her character. It's not like Maple's character is like the most unique or the most like unimaginable thing. Like it's a very unique thing that she's made, and only Maple could have done certain things. Like only Maple would think to add in everything into defense and vitality because that's just the person she is. But the build itself, I can see other people like using those abilities in the same way. I don't think like she's so unique. Like I just think it's just a funny little quirk of her character. But yeah, I do wish the show would stop being like, Maple's so unique. It's like, no, she is, but she's definitely, I refuse to believe she is the first person to think of these things. Like in this world where you have VR MMOs, where technology has evolved to have VR MMOs, I refuse to believe Maple is the first person to use that type of ability in that way. But the thing is, and I feel like people have gotten this misconception that when I poke fun at the show's like game mechanics that I'm really criticizing the show, and I'm not. I just think it's fun to kind of point out like, well, no, or like, well, that wouldn't work, or like, well, of course people would do that. Stuff like that, because again, yeah, people would totally use like cover move in that way or something like that. I'm not saying like, oh, the show's bad. I'm just saying like, oh, well, that's like funny. Like that's not how that would work, but given the nature of the show, I'm okay with it. Because the thing is, the show could feature the most busted, broken game in the history of MMOs, and I would probably still like the show because A, it just gives us some great action scenes because of how the show is set up, and B, I don't really care. I'm not here for the game mechanics. I'm here because I like Maple and Sally, and I like the world itself. I like the setting and like the nature of it. The game might be a little bit busted in certain areas. Certain classes might be a little bit OP, but at the same time, would I play New World Online? You bet your ass I would. This game, even though Yumi-kan has written it in such a way that it's a little bit busted, I would still die to play this game. I think it would be so much fun. So yeah, I just wanted to establish that because I feel like there's been a little bit of a disconnect between you and I on that front. I'm not when I poke fun at the show and its game mechanics, I'm not saying the show is bad for having these game mechanics that don't quite work. I just think it's funny. That's all. I should also point out that some people do not ship Maple and Sally in the way that I do. A lot of people are like, oh, they're just friends, which does give me vague flashbacks to Yuri and Victor, but like, hey man, y'all do you. I'm not saying that your opinion of them is wrong, that they're not a bro TP in your eyes. I'm just saying that you seem very boring and you need to up your ship game, darling. No, I'm not actually saying that, although I kind of am. Anyway, let's move on. We got to talk a little bit about the quite tricky boss fight. And this is, I have other things that I want to talk about, but I'm trying to make these videos a little bit shorter, and they're just sort of side tangents anyway. So let's focus up and talk about the big boss fight. The first time I have ever seen Maple not only get her ass handed to her, but also actually struggle. and it's in this boss fight with a shiny Articuno. I guess Maple and Sally did not heed Slowking's words of wisdom, and they decided to disturb the harmony of fire, ice, and lightning. Because yes, indeed, that thing is a shiny Articuno, and you cannot convince me otherwise. I was shocked to see that thing. But at the same time, it proved to be one of the coolest damn fights we have seen in this show so far. And keep in mind, we are on episode 4, and save for episode 1, which that boss fight was meant to be more for jokes, but the last 3 episodes now have had boss fights that give us some of the dopest action scenes this season. And I'm not saying that lightly. My immense kudos to Koji Ito and his team over at Silverlink, because they are just crushing it. And the thing too is, like, Koji Ito is in charge of the action animation over on Bofuri, whereas Kazuya Hirado is the one in charge of the actual, he's the chief animation director. But Ito just comes in here when the show needs that bit of flair, and my God, the action is outrageous. And it goes on and on and on. Like, this is a long-ass fight, and they really hammer home how difficult this fight is, because again, they actually use the action to their advantage to tell a story. In wrestling, right? And sorry to bring up wrestling, but in wrestling, if you want to make a character come off as strong, you'll usually put them in a squash match where you show just how powerful they are, that they're able to just steamroll over this opponent, right? So you have them in a squash match one week, and then the next week have them actually go toe-to-toe with somebody. And now you're like, whoa, this person went toe-to-toe with so-and-so when so-and-so was able to steamroll this guy. So that must make both of these people really, really strong. And that's what happens here, because the episode opened with this clown boss who was fighting Maple and Sally earlier, and we already know that Maple and Sally are pretty tough. The fact that the clown boss was like not so much that they steamrolled over him, but that they gave him a little bit of a challenge, kind of showed like, okay, so the bosses in level 2 are a little bit harder, but nothing that they won't be able to overcome. Then they go up against shiny Articuno here, and they do all this damage, and the thing's health bar barely budges, and now you're like, oh shit, this is gonna be intense. And so the episode actually managed to set up how strong Maple and Sally are, and then managed to show just how much stronger shiny Articuno is by having that health bar barely budge. And the fight that ensues is fantastic. Again, Koji Ito, as the action director, nails every scene. But obviously there's some cuts that I was like, that's Ito, and I'm getting a little bit better at spotting stuff. At least I thought I saw some cuts that looked like Ito's work, but when I checked on Sakugaboru, Ito's name wasn't listed. It was actually Hiroshi Yoneda, and they did the cut where Maple jumps in front of Sally and sort of tanks the hit like she's Piccolo from Dragon Ball, and it was cool. But I do think that Ito, because of how long the scene is, I feel like Ito must have done only a couple things, whereas other animators like Yoneda showed up to cover other scenes. It wasn't like the previous boss fights where you can kind of imagine that Koji Ito did the whole thing. It was really long, so I could definitely tell, like, okay, there's no way Ito did this whole thing. And regardless, the action is phenomenal. I actually can't stress enough how much of a surprise it is each week, because each week it'll be like this fun, cute girls doing MMO thing for a little bit, and then out of nowhere just knocks you out with some dope animation, some dope fights. Bofuri is such a surprise, and I just love this show to pieces. Also, I should mention that this game basically became Pokemon with the arrival of Syrup, which belongs to Maple, because, you know, Maple Syrup, her, and Oboro, which is this fox that now belongs to Sally. I didn't mention them. I don't really have much to say. They're basically Pokemon. This whole episode felt like Pokemon, but like where the trainers actually get to kick ass as well. So that's pretty fun, but I am going to try to wrap up my thoughts here because, again, I don't want these videos to go on too long. I think I've been doing a good job, but this episode kind of had a lot, so I was just trying to, like, organize my thoughts down, but yeah. But on that note, everybody, I am going to wrap up my thoughts here. Still not giving ratings at the end. At least if I do, it'll be something different. I have an idea of what I want to do, but I'm not going to do it quite just yet. But yeah, I love this episode. It was really fun, and I hope you guys did too. And that's going to do it for today's video, everybody. So I hope you guys enjoyed. And before we go, as always, I have to give a big thank you to the good folks over on Patreon, especially those in the Earl Grey tier: Andrew W., Calvin A., Crowbar of Irony, Daniel G., Digger the Fox, Dominic G, Ionos, Urza, Ginkutaku, Godzilla Fan, No For Nothing, Maria Teresa, Marshall B, Mirth Mouser, Cell, Shadow Creative, Sipco Games, Somastan, Stephen G, Sakochi, Tristan G, and Verdon. A huge thank you to all of you in the T Squadron for your continued support, and if you too would like to join the T Squadron, then be sure to check out the first link in the description to check out our Patreon page, see all the cool rewards you can get over there, as well as access to our Patreon exclusive Discord for as little as $1 a month. And with that said, we're going to wrap up today's video, everybody, so thank you all once again for watching, and if you are feeling stressed out today, then you go have yourself a warm cup of tea, and I will talk to you all again real soon.